Now, the Howard Street Cemetery is right next to the old prison. I will add that this 1813 prison is not where the prison was during the witch trials. That's a little bit down St. Peter's Street. It's and the large telephone building on also abutting Federal Street. The old prison is not nearly as large as the new one, and roughly the footprint is kind of centered around what is today the city clerk's office. But anywho, the Howard Street Cemetery, not only does it house many of the hanged prisoners from the prison, including Crowninshield and the Knapp brothers, which are right in front in unmarked graves. This is a cemetery that has a dark history that dates long before it was founded in 1801. Because this used to be an open field during the witch trials. And this is where Giles Corey was pressed to death. As a recap, 19 people were hanged, 55 people confessed, and one person said, "I do not respect the authority of this court." And that one man was Giles Corey. Now, Giles got a really nice makeover by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in the 19th century, and he didn't entirely deserve it. Giles Corey was a masshole in life, and as I'll tell you later, he has remained a masshole in death. To give you an idea of the character of Giles Corey, in 1670, he beat his indentured servant to death. And law was not exactly working, so he only got fined. Not everybody in the community thought that was an appropriate response. I think he should have gotten a bit more like hanged. This is accused of arson. Another name that will appear there by one John Proctor. You know, John Proctor is also the man who turned in Giles Corey for killing his servant. Another man who got a makeover, Arthur Miller. Both were not the nicest human beings on planet Earth. Anyway, Giles Corey was 80 years old, infirm, walking with two canes. And he's initially very interested in the witch trials. He is captivated by the testimony of Tituba. When they accuse his wife, he says, "Oh my gosh, no wonder things were going wrong. I was sleeping with a witch." I know. It's the kind of support we really all want from a spouse. Anywho, when they accused him a couple days later, he was not nearly as supportive of the decision. What had been the voice of God suddenly became the voice of the devil. And he said, "I don't respect you." Well, what is a poor Sheriff Corwin to do when an old, infirm man won't respect his authority? Well, this is the 17th century. They're creative. Corwin comes up with the idea of let's dig a pit in a nearby field, strip Corey naked. Yes, I know. Lovely dress for the idyllic, paradise-like weather that we enjoy here in Massachusetts. Anyway, strip him naked, put a couple of planks on him, and then just put some rocks. He will definitely confess. Anyway, what do? Corey survives more than 2 days doing this anyway. They strip him naked, planks on him, rocks. And George Corwin comes by every hour on the hour. Like, okay, well, man, how do you plead? And Corey simply says, more weight. Sometimes Corwin brings by his family, sometimes he brings by his friends, sometimes the very jurors on the court. And Corey only ever responds, more weight. Except for the second to last time. The penultimate time, Corey adds after he says more weight, and nice audibly adds under his breath, I curse you, Salem. Now, whether or not George Corwin heard that, no one knows. He didn't pay attention to it, because he gave Corey his more weight and then returned the next hour. Corey tries to respond. He can't. His tongue falls out of his mouth. Corwin pushes it back in. And Giles Corey expires. Dies. Now, you probably think that was an extrajudicial killing. But, according to George Corwin, Giles Corey could have confessed at any point. He could have pled guilty or not guilty. He didn't need to die, so it was technically a suicide. Yeah, Giles Corey's family had to pay exorbitant fines to keep their farm. And that has certainly made Giles Corey a really angry spirit. So, and George Corwin should have paid attention to that. Forever after, the specter of Giles Corey has been associated with disasters in Salem. The first of which started with George Corwin himself. Because a couple of years after the witch trials, Corwin suffers a massive heart attack and dies at the age of 30. Now, his finances also took a bit of a nosedive in the immediate aftermath of the witch trials as well. And a couple of ships that sank, and a man that was very well-to-do is suddenly desperately in debt. Of course, he's desperately in debt to a certain Philip English who wants £1,000. Well, George Corwin's family buries him in the basement because they're afraid that Philip English is going to take the body as a ransom for his £1,000. Anywho, a few years back, there was another sheriff of Essex County, a man by the name of Roger Ellis Cahill, who in 1978 suffers a heart attack and is forced to resign from being sheriff. Well, Cahill's somewhat interested in New England lore and New England history, and looks back. He remembered what happened to George Corwin, and I wonder how many sheriffs, suffered the same fate. And he looked back, and he can say every single sheriff, from George Corwin to himself, had either died in office or suffered some misfortune that ruined their career. Now, there are some rumors that the curse of Giles Corey ended when the sheriff's department moved to Middleton. And once again, you have to see. The first sheriff who served in Middleton, albeit did serve in Salem as well, his career ended after a bribery scandal. The second sheriff to serve in Middleton got to enjoy the opioid epidemic. And the third is still going strong, so we will yet to see. I'm not so sure the curse is over yet. That's not the only thing. As I said, the Howard Street Cemetery has some peculiarities, and Giles Corey is the center of that. It's like I'd mentioned when we were at the Charter Street Cemetery. Giles Corey is not just seen here and But yeah, in 1914, you do have that one woman, but you have a lot of people seeing Giles Corey in 1914. Some have seen him up here, some have seen. You do have that young lady who saw him in the cemetery. You had people see him on Washington Street and Essex Street. And there's the peculiarity that young woman was the only person that he spoke to. And she died, and forever after, she's now a ghost where she saw him. And if you ever speak to Giles Corey, hope that he doesn't respond, because you may be the next person haunting a spot where you see him. And he's a vindictive ghost, and it goes beyond just George Corwin and the sheriffs of Salem, and beyond Salem itself. The Howard Street Cemetery has a unique peculiarity in that a large portion of the people who are buried there were crushed to death. The cemetery is now closed, but 10% of all people buried there were crushed to death. Now, when it was first allocated in 1801, they didn't know who was going to be the first person. The first person was crushed to death. The second person buried there was crushed to death. The third and the fourth as well. The hand of Giles Corey is not restful. It reaches beyond the grave, because he's buried there. And now it is a cemetery. It very much resembles his tastes.